Hello, everyone. Welcome to English Insights. 80 years ago, in August 1945, a terrible event took place that changed the world forever. On August 6th and August 9th, two bombs were dropped on two cities in Japan. These were not ordinary bombs. They were atomic bombs, the first and only ones ever used in war. As the 80th anniversary approaches in August 2025, people around the world are taking time to remember what happened. It is a moment to reflect on the past and think carefully about the future. This event marks one of the most significant moments in human history. It ended World War II, but also began a new era. It caused immense pain and suffering. Today, many people consider these bombings to be among the greatest war crimes of the 20th century. In this long story, we will explore what happened on those days, why it happened, and what the world has learned from it. We will try to understand all sides of this difficult history. This story is also a valuable way to help you improve your listening and reading skills. Part 1. The World in 1945. First, let's think about the world in 1945. It was a very difficult time. The Second World War was coming to an end. This war had been going on for many years, since 1939. Many countries were fighting. In Europe, the war was almost over. Germany had lost and surrendered in May 1945. But in Asia, the war was still happening. The United States and its allies were fighting against Japan. The fighting was very hard and very long. Many soldiers had died. The U.S. military was planning to invade Japan with soldiers. This plan was called Operation Downfall. Military leaders believed this invasion would be very bloody. They thought many American soldiers, many Japanese soldiers, and civilians would die. It would be a very long fight. The U.S. had already dropped thousands of bombs on Japanese cities, causing widespread damage and death. But the Japanese government still refused to surrender unconditionally. They were prepared to fight to the last man to defend their homeland. This made the situation seem hopeless for a quick end to the war, without more great loss of life. At the same time, scientists in the United States had a big secret. They were working on a new kind of weapon, a bomb that was more powerful than anything the world had ever seen. This project was called the Manhattan Project. It was a very big project, and a lot of smart people worked on it. They were building a bomb that used the power of the atom. When the atom splits, it releases a huge amount of energy. This energy could destroy a whole city. The U.S. president at that time was Harry S. Truman. He had a very difficult choice. He could order a very bloody invasion of Japan, or he could use this new secret weapon. He believed that using the atomic bomb would end the war quickly. He thought it would save the lives of many American soldiers. He also thought it would save the lives of many Japanese people who would die in the invasion. This was the background for the terrible events of August 1945. Part 2. The Day the Sun Raced into the Sky, Hiroshima. The first atomic bomb was dropped on August 6, 1945. The city was Hiroshima. Hiroshima was not a military base. It was a normal city. It had about 350,000 people living there. There were homes, schools, hospitals, and parks. There were people going to work, children playing, and families living their lives. The city was a center of transportation and had some military facilities, but it was mostly a city of civilians. A civilian is a person who is not a soldier. The bombing happened with no warning to the people. They had no time to hide or to run. The U.S. had dropped some leaflets on Japanese cities before, but they did not give a specific warning about the new type of weapon. The day began just like any other, filled with the simple routines of daily life. Early in the morning on August 6th, a U.S. airplane flew over the city. The plane's name was the Enola Gay. Inside the plane was the atomic bomb. The bomb was nicknamed Little Boy. It was a very simple name for a very deadly weapon. The sky was clear that day. The people of Hiroshima did not know what was coming. They thought it was just another day. At 8:15 a.m., the Enola Gay dropped the bomb. It fell from the sky for about 43 seconds. Then it exploded high in the air, about 600 meters above the city. There was a huge, bright flash of light. It was so bright that people who saw it said it was like a second sun had appeared in the sky. The heat from the explosion was unbelievable. It was thousands of degrees hot. Everything near the center of the explosion was vaporized, turned into gas. People a little farther away were burned so badly that their skin melted off. Many people were killed instantly. The explosion also created a huge shock wave, a powerful rush of wind. This shock wave flattened almost everything. Buildings were pushed over like they were made of paper. All the houses, the schools, the bridges, they were all destroyed. What was left was a huge cloud, shaped like a mushroom. It went up into the sky, miles high. The city of Hiroshima was gone. It was just a flat, smoky, black and gray place. The streets were filled with dead bodies and with people who were badly hurt. Many people were wandering around looking for help. Their skin was hanging from their bodies. They were burned and injured. Many of them died in the hours and days after the bombing. The number of people who died that day is estimated to be around 70,000 to 80,000. But many more would die later from injuries and radiation. The doctors and nurses who survived were not able to help everyone. It was a complete and total disaster for the people of Hiroshima. The world had never seen anything like it. Part 3. A second act of destruction, Nagasaki. The Japanese government did not surrender after the bombing of Hiroshima. The American government waited. 3 days later, on August 9th, 1945, they dropped a second atomic bomb. The city was Nagasaki. The plan was not to bomb Nagasaki. The first target was a city called Kokura, but the weather was bad, and there were clouds over Kokura. The pilot of the plane, called Boxcar, could not see the city. So, he flew to the second target, Nagasaki. Nagasaki was also a busy city with many people. It had a population of about 260,000. It was an important port and had some industrial areas, but it also had many residential neighborhoods. The bomb was nicknamed Fat Man. It was a different type of bomb than Little Boy. At 11:02 a.m., Fat Man exploded over Nagasaki. The damage was also terrible, but it was different from Hiroshima. Nagasaki is a city with a lot of hills and valleys. These hills blocked some of the blast. So the destruction was not as spread out as in Hiroshima. But in the valleys where the bomb exploded, the destruction was complete. The immediate death toll in Nagasaki was around 40,000 to 70,000 people. Many more were badly hurt. Just like in Hiroshima, people were vaporized, burned, and crushed by the shock wave. The suffering was immense. 2 cities were destroyed in 3 days. Many people, especially children, were killed. The infrastructure of the city was completely destroyed. The transportation, the communication lines, the water pipes, everything was broken. This made it impossible to get help to the survivors. It was a second act of destruction that solidified the terrible reality of this new type of warfare. This second bombing was even more shocking for the world. It showed that the United States had not just one of these new, terrible weapons, but 2. After this, the Japanese emperor announced that Japan would surrender. The Second World War was finally over, but the world would never be the same. Part 4. The debate. Was it a war crime? Many people say that the atomic bombings were a war crime. A war crime is an action that is against the rules of war. These rules are made to protect people who are not fighting, like civilians. The people who say the bombings were a war crime have several reasons. First, they say that the bombs were dropped on civilian cities, not on military bases. The main victims were men, women, and children who were not soldiers. The bombs did not just kill soldiers. They killed everyone. This is called indiscriminate killing, which means killing people without a reason or without choosing who to kill. The rules of war say that you should not attack civilians. Dropping a bomb that kills everyone in a city is a clear attack on civilians. The sheer scale of death and destruction made it impossible to distinguish between military and civilian targets, and in many ways, the entire cities became the targets themselves. Second, the bombs caused a new kind of suffering, radiation sickness. The people who survived the initial blast were exposed to radiation. This made them very sick. Their hair fell out, they bled from their gums, and they had internal injuries. Many died a long time after the bombing. This was a new and horrible effect of war. The U.S. government knew about some of the effects of radiation, but they did not tell the world. They let people suffer without help. The long-term suffering of the survivors, many of whom developed cancer decades later, is a testament to the unique and cruel nature of atomic weapons. The impact of the bombings did not end on August 15, 1945. It continued for a lifetime for the hibakusha. Third, some historians believe that Japan was already losing the war and was close to surrendering. They say that Japan was ready to give up, but they wanted to keep their emperor. The U.S. could have negotiated this. They also point to another very important event. On August 9, 1945, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan and attacked Japanese forces in Manchukuo, now northeast China. Many people believe this Soviet invasion was a major reason for Japan's decision to surrender, making the second atomic bomb on Nagasaki unnecessary. The Japanese government was already facing the end of the war, and the entry of another major power, the Soviet Union, was the final blow to their hopes of continuing the fight. The bombings, they argue, were a demonstration of power. The U.S. wanted to show the world, especially the Soviet Union, its new power. The Soviet Union was a big communist country that would become America's next rival in the Cold War. Dropping the bombs was a message to the Soviet Union. We have this power, and we are not afraid to use it. This makes the bombings a political act, not just a military one. Finally, the scale of the destruction was too big. The bombs killed tens of thousands of people in an instant. This was not a military strategy. It was a terrible act of mass killing. These are the main reasons why many people today, including a lot of historians and human rights groups, call the atomic bombings a war crime. Part 5. The Survivors and the Legacy of the Bombs. The people who survived the bombings are called the hibakusha. This is a Japanese word that means explosion-affected people. They lived through a terrible event. Their lives were never the same. The hibakusha faced many problems. First, they had to deal with the physical effects of the bombing. They had to live with terrible scars from the burns. They had to live with sickness from the radiation. They got diseases like cancer at a much higher rate than other people. These illnesses followed them for their whole lives. The medical community at the time was not prepared for this. Many doctors in Japan did not know how to treat radiation sickness, and the U.S. government was slow to provide help or information. The suffering of the hibakusha became a terrible experiment in the long-term effects of nuclear weapons. Second, they faced social problems. Many people were afraid of them. They were afraid that radiation sickness could be contagious. that it could spread from one person to another. This was not true, but people did not know that. The hibakusha were often discriminated against. They had a hard time finding jobs or finding people to marry. They were seen as different, as somehow tainted by the bomb. This social stigma added to their pain and isolation. But the hibakusha did not give up. They became the most important voices for peace in the world. They traveled around the world to tell their stories. They showed people what nuclear weapons can do. They wanted to make sure that no one in the world would ever have to go through what they went through. Their stories are a powerful message against war and a powerful message for peace. They have become symbols of resilience and hope in the face of unimaginable horror. The atomic bombings also started the nuclear age. After the war, the United States was the only country with nuclear weapons. But soon, other countries like the Soviet Union, Great Britain, France, and China also developed their own nuclear bombs. This started a time called the Cold War. The world was divided into two big sides, and both sides had thousands of nuclear weapons. It was a time of great fear. People worried that a new war could destroy the whole world. The concept of mutually assured destruction meant that if one side used nuclear weapons, the other would use them too, and everyone would die. Because of this fear, many people and countries started to work for nuclear disarmament. They wanted to get rid of all nuclear weapons. They signed treaties, which are agreements, to stop making and testing new nuclear weapons. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki are a constant reminder of why this work is so important. They showed the world the terrible power of these weapons and the need to get rid of them forever. Part 6. A Different Path for the Future. The 80th anniversary of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 2025 is a time for reflection. It is a time for people to remember the past and to think about the future. The events of August 1945 are not just a story from the past. They are a lesson for today. We can learn a lot from this sad story. We can learn that war has terrible consequences, especially for innocent people. The story forces us to ask difficult moral questions. Is it ever right to cause such suffering to achieve a goal, even if that goal is to end a war? Does the end always justify the means? The story of the atomic bombings is not a simple story. It is a story with many different sides. There are people who still believe the bombings were a necessary evil that saved more lives. There are people who see them as an unforgivable act of mass murder. But no matter what people believe, everyone can agree on one thing. A future without nuclear weapons is a goal that all of humanity should work for. The cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki have been rebuilt. They are now beautiful, modern cities. They have museums and memorials to remember what happened. They are cities of peace. The people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki have a message for the world. Never again. They want to teach the world that there is no good reason to use such a weapon. They want to show that peace is always a better path. The museums, the memorials, and the stories of the hibakusha stand as a constant warning to the world. They are a promise that humanity must do better. The 80th anniversary is a time to listen to the voices of the hibakusha. It is a time to listen to their stories and to learn from them. It is a time to think about the terrible power of war and the beautiful power of peace. It is a time to remember the past so that we can build a better future for everyone.